Hi, guys. Hello, I see attendees joining in. Welcome to this webinar, Analytics Landscape Modernization and Transformation for Insurance. We are looking at empowering insurers and paving the way to cloud and looking at opportunities to de-risk the journey to modernized analytics landscape. I'm Vaishnavi Golapuri and moderator for today's webinar, and I'm the director for global marketing at Systech Solutions. I'm joined today by experts who have long-standing experience in building high-performance analytics ecosystem for large enterprises. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. First is Yusuf Gulamhussain. Yusuf is the Chief Technology Officer for Systech Solutions and has been instrumental in Systech's efforts to develop and bring new products and solutions to market. Yusuf's leadership and deep expertise in data and analytics has given him an edge while establishing Systech as a niche player in the field. Our next speaker is Ramki Ranganathan. Ramki is the Vice President for Data and Analytics for Systech Solutions. He's been at the helm for many of Systech's technology initiatives. He is the practice head of advanced analytics and cloud at Systech, innovating on novel technology frameworks and solutions for clients across insurance, banking, healthcare, retail, and restaurant industries. And joining them today is Mark Cusack. Mark is the Chief Technology Officer for Yellowbrick Data. Before joining Yellowbrick, Mark was Vice President for Data and Analytics at Teradata, where he led a variety of product management and technology teams in data warehouse and advanced analytics groups. He was also chief architect of Teradata's IoT analytics effort. Mark joined Teradata from the startup Rainstorm, where he was a co-founding developer and chief architect. Prior to Rainstorm, Mark was a lead scientist in the UK Ministry of Defense. Now, before I turn over to our speakers, I'd like to go over a few basics. Today's webinar is about an hour long, and at the end of the session, we will kick it over to Q&A. And if at any time you would like to ask a question to the panelists, I encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen and submit your question there. Over to Yusuf to kick off the session.
Thanks, Vaishnavi. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Good morning on the West Coast. My name is Yusuf. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Systech. And I just want to set a stage for our core session on accelerating modernization and business transformation through a powerful data platform. And I want to kick it off with what has been a common theme for the last 2+ years. We all have been through COVID, and it has truly had a profound effect on businesses, large and small, across all verticals, and especially in insurance, because insurance has always been a high-touch business model. And due to COVID, there was a major disruption and major impact to business productivity and customer experience. Now, luckily, we are coming out of COVID, and in the post-pandemic world, what we are seeing is there is now a need for businesses to create what we see as a digital business platform. In essence, it's just a connected ecosystem of all your key major players within an organization, be it your customers, be it your partners, be it your internal systems or your devices, as you all have come familiar with, all the IoT and smart devices that are deployed across the business function. The key idea is your entire business needs to be driven by data and analytics. So coming out of COVID, there is this acceleration to go through digital transformation so that companies can become more relevant, stay relevant, but more importantly, become resilient to things like COVID or any other pandemic that comes down the line. So there is this urgency, there is this absolute need to become digital and be driven truly by data and analytics at its core. Now, the question is, why data analytics? What does it really offer? So if you look at it, right, what is most important for companies to stay relevant is the ability to adapt to the market changes. So one of the things that happened in COVID was it came as a big shock, and companies are not ready. They were not able to react quick enough, to make those changes. Data analytics truly offers that ability to quickly adapt to market changes. And how it really does is the ability to look at what's happening around, be it your competition, be it your customer profile, be it your partner ecosystem, the ability to sense, which in terms of data and analytics, it's about are you gathering enough data points across your business domains to understand what's truly happening. Once you start assessing your data, start sensing, then you start to kind of assimilate, harmonize those data points using technology to try and understand patterns and trends that are happening around you. And then you truly apply analytics, which means doing experimentation with your business model using data to figure out what works, what doesn't work. Can we innovate with new products depending on the market changes? And then finally, based on all of those insights, truly act in time, proactively, and make smart business decisions. So the ability to sense, harmonize, experiment, and act truly gives you that adaptive business strategy. And that absolutely is a key to staying relevant going forward. And more importantly, as I mentioned, staying resilient, because we saw a whole bunch of companies during COVID that went out of business because they couldn't react quick enough, right? So data analytics at its core truly offers that adaptive business strategy, which leads to building that complete digital business ecosystem. So now the question for us is coming out of COVID, what is the opportunity, right? And the way we see opportunity is it's about applying technology to remove any point of friction within your key processes. It's as simple as that. So the idea is you take your current business process, apply technology through digitization. So if any of those processes are manual, we make it digital. If the processes are not automated, we make it automated. And finally, apply AI and intelligence to each of these processes. So your entire ecosystem truly becomes data driven and you're able to take smarter business decisions using data. So truly using technology as an enabler, like intelligent document processing, which is very key in any insurance companies, applying RPA, the use of IoT devices to track sensor data, track any of those edge devices, if you will, and then apply machine learning and data analytics to it. So there are truly technology enablers that are available, but the goal is to meet the core business objective, be it improving customer experience leading to growth, be it operational excellence leading to more efficient processes, or limiting our exposure, looking at risk mitigation, looking at security and privacy for compliance. And finally, not last but not the least, truly figuring out new product ideas that come out of data analysis. And we will see a glimpse of some of these business use cases in one of our following sections. And on the technology side, you look at what is modern and what is cutting edge, because the key piece of the puzzle is the ability to host data wherever it is on a most powerful data platform. And we will learn about one such platform, uh, Yellowbrick, and Mark will talk about it in detail in our next session. Now, when we talk about building a digital business platform driven by data analytics, so what does that data analytics ecosystem or framework look like? Which is what Systech as an organization, we have devised what we call as a modern DNA framework, which does simple this, takes any existing process which you see on the far left, and through application of data, through application of analytics, and through use of technology, we make each of these processes smarter, as you see it on the right. And the key is again the same. digitization, automation, and intelligence. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the goal is to take a look at the modern data framework holistically and look at each of your journey and see, are you already on that path? Are you kind of on at the beginning of the journey, or you already have a system in place that requires modernization, requires uh, a lift up, if you will. Um, but the key aspect here is building a robust ecosystem of data analytics that allows you to do the four things I talked about. The ability to sense, harmonize, experiment, and act. Now, modernization, as I said, is absolutely imperative. Uh, Going away and using modern technology is a way to go. But what's more important that is, how do you accelerate modernization? Because time to value is the key in today's world. If you are behind, then you lose out. So what we have next, presented by Ramki, is our approach to truly accelerate this modernization process and become market ready and reduce time to value. So, on that note, would like to hand it over to Ramki to walk through our accelerated modernization approach. Ramki?
Awesome. Thanks, Yusuf. So what I would like to do in the next 3 or 4 slides is to define what constitutes modernization, right? And how do enterprises approach the modernization in terms of the methodology as well as the implementation tactics, if you will. And then I wanted to highlight how and where automations or accelerations can be applied. And I wanted to talk about one of the very successful use case where we helped a major insurance provider migrate to the Yellowbrick platform. So as Yusuf pointed out, there is no question about the data management and analytics modernization is a very essential and key component in order to stay competitive, right? So what that modernization means in a very simple sense, it's just having the infrastructure, the process, the technology, the people all in place in order to get the right information or the insights gleaned from a vast variety of data, voluminous data coming at different frequencies to the right people at the right time through the right channel. And there is no question of doubt that modernization is going to enable it. Enterprises who don't focus on modernization, as Yusuf pointed out, face very key challenges during this pandemic, and some of those businesses were out of business. So modernization is very essential, but what does that modernization mean, right? In its core, the modernization of platform means the migration of data structures and data, historical data, as well as the incremental data from your traditional data warehouses, on-premise data warehouses running on SQL Server or Oracle or Netezza exterior platforms, if you will, to a more modern, scalable, flexible, cloud-based or cloud-native environments like Yellowbrick, right? That's actually represented by the middle layer here. This is a very key stream of migration. The heart of migration is your data and data structure and data migration. Surrounding that is an ecosystem, right? You have all touch points where data is being fed into the data warehouses from sources internal and external to organization. Your ERP platforms or IoT data coming from devices, especially for insurance industry, like telematics data. Sentiment data coming from social media conversations, which is very key to understand the pulse of the customer in real time, right? So rewiring all of those data sources into the modern data warehouse is one aspect of it. One end of the spectrum, if you will, is what we call as an ETL or extract transform load or extract load transform, ETL or ETL strategy. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the consumption end. Data is being fed primarily from data warehouse for analytics, for gleaning information or insights from data. There are other touch points as well. Data can be federated to other parts of the organization, or it could be shared with partners and vendors, or it could be shared with customers as well. So all of those touch points from a consumption end also have to be migrated. Migrated meaning, modernized. Now, based on the outcome of your modernization strategy, you can decide to, some enterprises can decide to do the modernization of all three streams in one shot, or it could be a phased approach where, we migrate the middle layer, the data migration layer, retain your current enterprise ETL and analytics platforms, rewire them to the modern data warehouse, and then take the modernization of these other two streams in further phases. Now there is, as you can see, there is a whole set of permutations and combinations that can happen here, right? So the purpose of the slide is to define the scope of what modernization really means in terms of migration of your data management as well as analytics layer. Now, with respect to the methodology, and of course, there is a whole strategy sessions, a set of sessions that should happen in order to define your migration roadmap. The outcome of that migration roadmap could be, as I explained in the previous slide, could be just the data warehouse migration or the whole ecosystem migration. Right? Once we have that strategy defined, then you go through a well-defined set of phases represented here at a very, very high level. So initially, we do what is called as a discovery and assessment, where we kind of finalize all the different objects, all the different data sources, data streams, data structures, reports, dashboards, applications, all of those things that need to be migrated are finalized in this discovery phase. Not only that, we also do impact analysis and what we call as lineage in terms of a report or a dashboard. Starting from there, figuring out what data elements belong to those reports and dashboards, all the way to the source, all the transformations that are applied to it, all the logic that is being business logic being applied to the data in order to get to that state is a key information that we need. And this will help us not only in the migration but also from a validation standpoint. Now, based on the platforms that you're migrating from and then you're migrating to, we do what we call as a structural mapping. Of course, these platforms like Yellowbrick make the migration seamless and provide all of the functionalities that a modern data warehouse should provide. And there are some structural differences that needs to be mapped between your source system and your target system. So all those things happen in the discovery and analysis phase. And of course, we have the YB Yellowbrick configuration that needs to be set up. The whole environment needs to be set up on the cloud, either it be on AWS or Azure or Google, and that needs to be automated as well from using scripts like using CloudFormation or Terraform in terms of setting up the required infrastructure. All of the dependencies has to be set up in place based on your needs. And then we have a major portion of the migration, which is the migration plus the re-architecting. Now, in our experience, what we have seen is there is some amount of re-architecting which is going to be involved when you're modernizing your data warehouse. So all of those, actual migration, let's say from SQL Server to Yellowbrick or from Netezza to Yellowbrick, your data structures, historical data migration, which can happen at multiple phases of the entire modernization roadmap based on how you're handling the in-flight projects. So all those things happen in the third phase. And the last phase, the most important phase, is the validation and deployment in production, and followed by monitoring and from a usage and cost perspective and so on. Now, in all these phases, we can apply automation. And I think I've highlighted that briefly when I talked about discovery. In order to get the list of objects that needs to be migrated from different environments. Let's say you have an Informatica as your enterprise ETL platform migrating from Netezza, and you have MicroStrategy reports and dashboards. The metadata can be gathered, and then the data lineage, the impact analysis, all those things can be automated. And that's what we do as part of a platform, which I'm going to explain shortly. So from a migration standpoint, typically when data warehouses, the ETL process loads this data from the source into what we call the staging environment, which is typically one-to-one mapping. And from stage, you apply transformations and they load it into the final data warehouse. So there are a lot of processes that could be simply a matter of touching it, changing the connections, and validating it. And all of those things can be automated as well. And finally, the validation, the data validation, comparing, let's say you're migrating from Netezza to Yellowbrick, you need to compare, tables to tables. And sometimes the tables to tables need not be like one-to-one mapping. Table A in your source, in your on-prem data warehouse can be a completely different structure. So those need to be validated as well. Your enterprise ETL process, your dashboards need to be validated as well. And based on the enterprise validation strategy, plus at what level you are validating, there are different strategies, validation strategies that could be applied. The most extensive validation is cell-to-cell comparison of the results, but you could do metrics aggregation, you could do sample record checks and things like that. Now, all of these things, wherever the automation can be applied, including our experience working in this data warehouse field for almost 30 years, we have created a product what we call as DB Shift. What it entails is to have at least 70% of the effort automated across all the 4 streams that we talked about, saw on the previous slide. So as an example, let's say you have your source data warehouse, which it could be SQL Server, Netezza, MySQL, Oracle, Teradata, and you're migrating to a modern environment like Yellowbrick. So there are multiple levels of migration that happens, starting with the most granular objects in your data warehouse, which is tables, columns, how you're defining your tables, your distribution strategy, the security access management policies that are in place, the encryption, data in transit, and data at rest. All of those things constitute what we call as a structural migration that should happen. Surrounding this structure is your data management objects, what we call as stored procedures, your functions, your views, your materialized views, SQL scripts, and things like that. And plus your data that flows in through your ETL platform in terms of SQL scripts or mappings that needs to be migrated. And finally, all of the touch points around your data warehouse needs to be migrated, either it be analytics platforms like Tableau or MicroStrategy or Power BI. All those needs to be migrated as well. Now, at the core of a DB Shift platform is what we call as a mapper, and this mapper is driven by machine learning and artificial intelligence capabilities, which does not only just finding a regular expression pattern in your SQL script or in your ETL metadata. It also goes beyond that, and it learns and figures out in terms of for example, okay, Yellowbrick combines your NVARCHAR data type into VARCHAR, but SQL Server has a different data type called NVARCHAR. So in terms of mapping that, it is very flexible. It could learn and it could actually produce the target structure in whatever formats that you want. So this is the core of a DB Shift utility. The metadata that we collect from these platforms, plus the logic that we apply on top of it, in order to not only automate the grunt work in terms of changing connections and validating it, but it also enables reactivity to a certain extent. Now, when we applied this to one of our customers, and this is a recent migration that we did from Netezza to Yellowbrick for a major insurance service provider here in Americas. So their environment is equally complicated to any other modern enterprise, right? In terms of about 4,500 Informatica workflows, about 4,000 Informatica mappings, of which 90% had like SQL overrides. We use SQL in order to get the maximum efficiency out of platforms like Netezza, and then about 1,800 data structures that need to be migrated. So we started with a POC, we used DB Shift, and we were able to convert about 100 processes in a couple of days. So that POC turned out to be a project, and you won't believe we completed the entire migration within a few weeks. So that gave a lot of time for them to spend more time on the validation, on the re-architecting portion of it. And DB Shift itself was very flexible in terms of giving them the flexibility to address issues that come up during the migration. So as an example, Informatica has this concept of lookups. You can define the lookups the way you want. Either you can have a direct live lookup, meaning that, let's say you have a source data coming in, you have to look up the source data against a table in your data warehouse. You can do live lookups, or you can do cache lookups, and so on. And while we were doing this migration, there was a need to switch that lookup strategy as well, and we were able to automate that as well on the fly. Right, so it's not only a fixed set of rules that we have in the product, but it also gives us the flexibility to change it dynamically and quickly in order to meet our customers' demands. Right, so this is a case study, and so hope I was able to give you the sense of what modernization effort looks like, some of the complexities that can happen, where automation could be applied, and obviously this case study that we did with one of our customers. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mark, who's going to talk more about the Yellowbrick platform, how it fits into this NDF, and he also has a use case that he wants to share with us.
Thank you very much, Ramki. So over the next 10 or so minutes, what I'd like to talk about is a little more about the Yellowbrick data warehouse in particular, but also weave it in with that journey that multi-line US insurance company went through as they migrated in the way that Ramki outlined. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll first introduce Yellowbrick to you, because I'm sure for many of you, you may never have come across this before, but we are a global business. We're based in Mountain View, California. We were founded in 2014. And our mission is really rather simple. We're bringing together data distributed across the enterprise, whether that's in cloud, on-prem environments, or even at the network edge, and making it very easily queryable using SQL. And to do this, we built a revolutionary data warehouse. The Yellowbrick Data Warehouse is a database for analytics. It's massively parallel in the way that it scales, and it's elastic. So it has all of the kind of table stakes capabilities you'd expect out of a modern data warehouse running in the cloud. And of course, it's easily queryable using standard SQL and all of the ecosystem tools that surround and support SQL as a query language. So the Yellowbrick Data Warehouse is extremely flexible in terms of its deployment options. You can deploy Yellowbrick in any one of the major public clouds, but you can also deploy on premises as well. And so what we're giving CIOs and insurance companies here is optionality, particularly as companies merge, they acquire sort of subsidiaries or so on, or their cloud strategy changes, or they're starting to become concerned about notions like cloud concentration risk, putting all of your data in one particular cloud and the potential for cloud outages and a lack of access. A lot of CIOs are talking to us about how we can provide a more flexible, adaptable way of deploying data warehousing at the point of need, and providing that kind of literally an insurance policy, so that no matter what happens to their cloud provider or how their strategy changes, they can get from on-prem with Yellowbrick into cloud, or they can have a multi-cloud deployment strategy. And we've taken a product strategy approach where we make it very, very easy to deploy data warehousing through different lines of businesses. We have a single pane of glass to manage from a unified perspective where you deploy data warehousing, how you deploy it, for doing chargebacks along different lines of businesses, and making it very, very easy to consume. And quite often I'm asked, well, how is Yellowbrick different from a lot of the other data warehouse vendors out there? You might today be using a data warehouse capabilities that's provided by AWS or Google or Microsoft Azure, for example, or you may be using Snowflake, or looking at these different vendors in an evaluation sense. And what I like to point out is how we're very different. First of all, we do deploy on any public cloud, which obviously the cloud service providers have that limitation. They can't quite do that. Of course, Snowflake can. It can equally deploy on any cloud. We've also taken a different approach to the spend and installation and management of data warehousing in the cloud. And we don't sell infrastructure to you. We deploy Yellowbrick in your own cloud account. It's highly automated. We stand up and provision data warehousing through our APIs and through our UIs. So you don't have to manage the individual details of what's happening at the cloud infrastructure. But the point is it runs in your own cloud account on infrastructure you pay for. So if you have great discounts with the cloud service providers, you can apply that to your Yellowbrick spend. And we have a very, very simple data warehouse pricing model here. And it would come as no surprise, being cloud-based, that we have a consumption on-demand style way of consuming Yellowbrick, pay by the hour, as it were. But we also have a blended model in that you can provision data warehousing on a capacity basis. So you can buy capacity up front at a lower rate and use data warehousing in that way. And many of our customers who have a well understood fixed workload that might be running 24/7, might be supporting follow the sun operations around the world for a lot of their core applications, but then they need additional capacity at the end of month or the end of quarter, perhaps when they're doing additional claims ratio processing and things like that, where they need additional capacity. And our blended model of on-demand and capacity-based pricing allows us to do that very flexibly. The other aspect of deploying Yellowbrick within your own cloud account is that all of your data retains fully under your ownership here. And so you're not giving your data to a third party and other data warehouse providers to manage. You are owning your own data in your own cloud account, in your own VPC or VNet, and securing it yourself. Now, we built a huge amount of efficiency into the core Yellowbrick database. So we're built for very, very high concurrency. We have examples of customers that are using Yellowbrick with 4,000 users accessing a single system, 8 million queries a day hitting the system, over petabytes of data. So we're built for scale. And we've also coupled that with huge efficiency. And so we can do, in terms of the number of nodes or compute capabilities you might consume in the cloud, we can do what these other providers could do and more in a fraction of the resources as well. So we've really built efficiency into the heart of our database system. Now, excuse me, we're a horizontal data warehouse platform, of course, but since we're really focused on insurance, we have a number of insurance customers. In fact, 2 out of the top 10 global insurance providers are Yellowbrick customers, and they use us for their IFRS 9 and 17 compliance reporting. They use us for claims ratio processing, for figuring out their investments strategy based on incurred but not reported workloads, and their actuaries are using us for discovery operations, for doing what if analysis and interactive query performance, so we can handle the full sort of array of reporting, whether it's batch reporting, dashboards, interactive exploratory queries. We can all handle those kinds of workloads on the fly. So a lot of our customers, not just insurance, but across manufacturing, financial services and telco, and payment providers and so on and so forth, are using us typically in what we would call business critical use cases. So they're using Yellowbrick in situations where they're switched on 24/7, they're under constant workloads, there are strict SLAs around the query performance that we have to deliver in these kinds of use cases. And very often we're dealing with use cases that at the end of the day involve money, and we cannot afford to provide wrong answers, not be available when required. We've got to be there when the customer expects it and meet the quality of services that they demand here. Now, we're often used to replace what I would say is typical legacy technology, whether it's Netezza, as Ramki referred to earlier, because Netezza is going in as an end-of-life platform, so people are now considering getting off that onto a modern alternative. And so we have a great deal of a successful track record in migrating off things like Netezza. We're often modernizing Hadoop clusters that folks are trying to use them for almost a SQL data warehousing use case, and hitting the concurrency limits and the pain points around cost of maintaining and doing that. So a lot of customers are migrating off Hadoop onto Yellowbrick as well. And of course, those other traditional vendors like Oracle Exadata and Teradata are also looking to Yellowbrick as they complete and move on their journey to the cloud, and look at how they modernize on-prem at the same time. So it can be incremental cloud migrations we're involved with. where they're looking at lifting and shifting their entire operation from an on-prem data center into the cloud, or they're looking at it, doing it in a considered basis and maintaining a hybrid stance where they have some Yellowbrick data warehousing on premises and some in the cloud, depending on the workload or the sensitivity of the data. And one of the things we built into the Yellowbrick data warehouse from the start was the compatibility with existing ETL tools. And kind of Ramki referred to this earlier in that process that you go through when you're considering a modernization and a data warehouse migration. Do you want to switch out all your upstream ETL tooling for a different alternative as you move to the cloud, or is it important for you to maintain those data pipelines as they exist? And so we consider ourselves a drop-in replacement for many of the data warehouses out there. We don't disrupt your upstream ETL tasks. We're able to cope with those. And so as you modernize and migrate, it's not a boil the ocean activity or operation here. You can decide to change the data warehouse and then think about modernizing other ecosystem components as you go on. So how we helped, I'd say in kind of 3 core areas is how we help businesses on this data modernization and move to the cloud. First of all, it's about modernizing off those legacy data warehouses that are going end of life towards a future elastic stack, not just adopting a legacy vendor solution that they've simply lifted up and moved into the cloud, but they're looking for something that has all of those cloudy attributes like elasticity, separated compute and storage, a new pricing on demand model, as well as capacity, so that we're helping companies modernize off their existing data warehouse platforms. The second area is on that route to the cloud. As I mentioned, because we can deploy and modernize on-prem, as well as give them a route to data warehousing in the cloud, it really de-risks their buying decisions here and this performance and the speed by which they want to migrate. We can give them the options of going to their chosen cloud or even a multi-cloud stance and have this extremely easy control plane and management plane that can support even multi-cloud or hybrid cloud deployments. Now, at the heart of Yellowbrick is our amazing price performance. And so, although the technology is all aimed at extreme efficiency, very, very fast SQL query performance, at the end of the day, that delivers business values and outcomes. And time is money, and faster answers mean you spend less on compute. You have one step ahead of your competitors from an advantage perspective, and we can deliver that within the platform, regardless of where you deploy it. And so we've partnered very closely with Systech on this journey. Our responsibility is really around the core data platform, the data management side of things. Often the most important data in a company's entire estate is within their data warehouse. And so as they look to a modern alternative that can scale as their business scales, they're more frequently over time choosing Yellowbrick. And Systech provides an incredibly critical level of automation and tooling and capability and experience around moving insurance companies, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing companies onto Yellowbrick and really reducing the friction and the cost of doing that. Tools today like DB Shift have an enormous amount of automation, as Ramki explained. And so it's migrations to a modern platform these days are much easier than they have been in the past, particularly when it comes to highly complex environments, which we'll talk about in a moment, where you, I think as Ramki mentioned, where you've got 5,000 legacy Informatica jobs that you've got to maintain and convert. You need a huge level of automation. So Systech is a trusted partner for us and helps the customer get through that entire end-to-end migration process with as little pain as possible. This is my final slide. I just wanted to key in a little bit to this same US multi-line insurer that became a Yellowbrick customer, and that Systech assisted in the migration there. As Ramki mentioned, they were moving off Netezza. They wanted to route to the cloud. They actually down selected through an RFP process from around 13 or 14 different vendors down to Snowflake and Redshift and Yellowbrick, and then ultimately, due to the price performance that Yellowbrick was delivered, decided to go with Yellowbrick here. But the migration effort and the size of the problem was significant. They had 400 plus terabytes of data, hundreds of applications that Systech helped migrate, thousands and thousands of ETL jobs and existing SaaS jobs that needed to be migrated and connected with the new data warehousing environment. But this process went through very quickly. The entire data migration happened in a matter of weeks, which gave the insurer enough time to go through the validation, the Q&A process to ensure that all of their business processes were reporting to the same results that they were getting with their prior data warehouse platform. But, from a business value perspective, at the end of the day, they saw enormous benefits. I mentioned IFRS 9 and 17 reporting. They were seeing a 50% speed up of their end of month report generation after they switched to Yellowbrick. They had this huge legacy process for calculating incurred but not reported charges when claims are starting to be reconciled, but the payment hasn't gone yet because the claim hasn't fully been submitted. And being able to recast the amount of investment reservations they need to make as a process that's gone down from 2 to 3 days to just 12 hours. And what that really means in real terms is they can more quickly decide from a P&L perspective how much cash they need to keep on their books very quickly and how much they can invest. So just shortening that window from 2 to 3 days to 12 hours can actually result in hundreds of thousands of dollars gained in investments and interest over the period of a year. Their claims ratio processing increased from again a matter of 3 to 4 days to being 2 to 3 times faster as well. It meant that their claims processors could start their tasks at the start of the day rather than receiving the claims to be processed for a day mid-morning or towards the afternoon, which they were getting on their previous platform. So the level of productivity for their claims people increased by switching to Yellowbrick as well. Their business objects reports ran much faster. They get 60% time savings in month-end financial closes. And as I said, a lot of this actually with these benefits that came around making business level, corporation level investment decisions faster and making money out of the back end because of these faster decisions. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Ramki to talk a little bit more in detail around the kinds of insurance cases.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time to show you a couple of analytics use cases that Yusuf mentioned, right? And also, as Mark mentioned, moving to a modern platform like Yellowbrick saves a lot of time and effort. Reports run twice as fast as before. So the question now is, can we, it's not answering the question of can we do this analysis, because that question is answered by modernizing the data warehouse platform by moving to Yellowbrick. But the question right now that needs to be answered is from an analytics standpoint, what else can we do? How can we make our analysis more sophisticated, more accurate, and get the insights faster, right? And I think Yusuf was talking about this in his opportunity slide where we have technology enablers, either it be analytics or it could be concepts like data lineage or data catalog. They are directly tied to business outcomes, and modernization opens up the tap for more sophisticated, more modern, more advanced analytics, like what is listed here, right? I want to take a couple of quick examples here and wanted to show you, what are some of the modern analytics that could be performed or that is enabled after the modernization effort, right? If you have any particular questions about any of those analytics, if you want me to drill down, would love to have a separate offline discussion with any of you who have those questions, and we can go in detail. But a couple of quick examples that I wanted to walk you through today is one is on the operational excellence or efficiency. Yusuf talked about robotic process automations or RPAs or applying named entity recognition, NERs, or natural language processing. All those techniques can be applied to service the customers in a faster and more accurate manner, thereby increasing customer satisfaction. At the same time, using telematics data, we can do a lot of sophisticated analysis in order to incentivize good driving behavior. At the same time, identify risks where it should be handled appropriately. Right now, with that, let me go to the live dashboards. Now, with respect to applying artificial intelligence onto the operational side, not necessarily from analytics side, but making the process much faster and more accurate and easier for people, I have some examples here, right? So typically, claims processing involves a lot of images. It could be, images of the collision, the vehicle, the background, and from these images, a lot of information could be gleaned. Now, here is an example where we have again a global insurance provider. You have multiple languages here, and we have Arabic as an example here. And this is an example of an identity card. And it could be, it could be a clear image like what you see here, or it could have some distortions or noises as well, right? Now, there are models available from an image recognition standpoint, which could glean information from images like this, right? Like, for example, from here, we are able to get all the key information, what kind of identity type is that, on all the information that is there in that image, right? It also gives you a confidence level in terms of what's the dependability of the information that is gleaned from these images. And recently, we did a POC for another insurance provider where we were able to assess the level of damage from pictures of collision. When an accident happens and those images are being submitted for claims processing, it kind of assesses the damage, and it helps the insurance investigators, the claims investigators, to accelerate that, the claims resolving policy, which in turn leads to customer satisfaction. And on the same note, you have a lot of forms involved. Some of these forms could be, typed in as you see here, or it could be handwritten, and it could have multiple languages as well as you see here. There are a lot of RPA models that are available right now in order to get information from these forms. Just like what we saw in the previous example, it could go and get all the key information about the members and all the other information filled in those forms, right? And again, from a global insurance provider perspective, if you have multiple languages, we can do speech to text services in order to get sentiments of what people are talking about the insurance products. At the same time, translating models can help us translate from one language to another language, right? And these examples help us to automate from an operation standpoint, and makes the process of the either from a claim standpoint or from a policy or code standpoint a lot easier. Another example here is that here you have a lot of free-form text, especially when you do claims processing. You will have information about explanation about what happened and who was at fault and all those things. So we can use NER, or named entity recognition model, to glean information from these free-form text as well. Now, the example that I have here is for a medical insurance, but the same could be applied for vehicle or home insurance or anything like that. Right? Now, as you can see, it kind of got all the key information about the patient, about its diagnosis and what is the symptoms, and all those things can be obtained from free-form text as well. Now, these are from an RPA, NLP, image recognition, machine learning models that can be applied to accelerate the services provided to the customers, increasing their customer satisfaction. Another example that I wanted to show from an analytics standpoint is, you have telematics data. Now, almost all insurance providers have the ability to put telematic devices, IoT devices, in the vehicle, which not only captures the vehicle conditions in terms of how often it is serviced, what is the condition of the vehicle. It also provides information about the driver behavior, how aggressive, or what kind of a driver is that person, right? Now, when you collect all the telematics data, it could give us a lot of information, like what you see here, clustering of customers based on their risk portfolio. Now, the risk calculation itself can be customized based on different factors, and some of these is what is highlighted here, right? Now, here, one of the factors could be how long has the engine been running, which kind of gives an idea about the annual mileage information that was entered when the policy was created, and comparing it against the actual mileage being driven, right? And also from from a driving behavior standpoint, how many times harsh braking has happened and things like that. A lot of factors like this can be considered in order to calculate the risk score of the vehicle as well as the driver, and we can do clustering, unsupervised machine learning algorithms to classify the customers into high risk and low risk segments. Now, this dashboard helps multiple functional areas. From a sales and marketing standpoint, people can think about how to incentivize a low risk customers perspective. People who are good drivers, they maintain their vehicles very clean and stuff like that. At the same time, what can we do about high risk customers? How can we help them not to fall in this high risk category, but slowly move towards the low risk category? And of course, this could be sliced by any business dimension. And what we have here is based on geography. You can actually look at a holistic picture of the entire area, or you can drill down into individual counties or cities and look at the driver behavior from that perspective as well. Right. So here are a couple of examples of after modernization, the modernization from an analytics standpoint of what is possible, and especially a scalable and flexible platform like Yellowbrick enables to do these kind of analytics. And what we typically ask our customers is to also think about from the perspective, because once you move to a platform like Yellowbrick, it's going to cut down your data processing time a lot. It is going to increase the reports being available to end users in a much faster and more accurate manner. Now, what else can you do is something that people have to start thinking about, right? So hope that gave a complete picture of just not from a data management modernization, from an analytics modernization as well. I will hand it over back to Vaishnavi to facilitate Q&A at this point.
Hey, thank you, Ramki. Those are really interesting perspectives, especially because you see across so many insurers and you get a feel for what is going on in the market and thinking ahead of it. Just stepping into Q&A, please do ask your questions. I know we're cutting it very close to the finish line. We have some really good questions coming in. This is going to be an interesting one going off the bat. Keep them coming. I see Mark and Yusuf pitch into several of the questions that's coming in our chat. In our type answer section in the Q&A. But some of it that came early on. So I have this question from Joel K. Reju. What are the ETL BI tools which are currently supported by DBShift, and how easy or difficult it is to extend it to a new ETL or BI tool? Ramki, how would you like to respond to that?
Absolutely. So any tools that has some kind of a metadata exchange, Informatica is really good at it in terms of, you can get the metadata out of Informatica and you can use that for our mapper, just like what I described before, is supported by DBShift. We have done Informatica migrations, Informatica to Glue migrations, data stage migrations using DBShift, right? On the analytics side, we can do, again, the same concept, right? MicroStrategy, Tableau, Power BI, all these modern platforms have the ability to, interchange metadata in some format, right? JSON or XML. So any modern platforms are supported through DBShift.
Great. That's great. The next question is, what are the typical challenges which will arise during modernization, which will cause risk to the program or project? This is from Muhammad Riaz. Yusuf, maybe you can answer that.
There are multiple perspectives, but the one that I would like to touch upon, talking about more of a big picture scenario. Lot of modernization engagements typically fail not because of technology, because we have seen that if there is no buy-in from top leadership, if there is no true commitment to modernization, that's where typically these kind of projects fail. So one of the things that we offer to our customer is a kind of a roadmap that allows them to see through some of these pitfalls and help rally up leadership to kind of sponsor the whole process, right? And then once it is driven from top, that's where we see a lot of success happening with these kind of large scale modernization engagements. So I would say typically, aside technology, the biggest challenge would be strong buy-in from top leadership, and obviously there is always this resistance to change, and typically we have seen in insurance, traditional companies 100 years, 150 years old, they don't want to move away from legacy. So it takes that amount of coaching and training to be able to see the other side and help them get through that whole process of change. So a lot of these soft challenges are more prominent, if I have to say that, rather than technology itself.
Great.
I just hope that answers the question.
No, that's very good. Makes sense, Yusuf. I know Mark took this, he typed the answer for it, but I think for benefit of all, let's get this last question. And for Mark, why is multi-cloud support important, Mark? What do you want to add to it?
Yeah, and it's becoming increasingly important in many regulated industries. And I'll pick on financial services and banking for one of them, for example, is multi-cloud is important when you factor in notions like cloud concentration risk. So cloud concentration risk is all about what happens if a financial institution puts all of their operations in one particular cloud provider, and that cloud provider suffers an outage or a security breach or something like that. That obviously could have a major impact on a bank's ability to do business. But what actually a lot of financial regulators have become increasingly performant is concerned about, rather, is the systemic risk to the entire financial system if all banks decide to put their eggs in one cloud provider basket. And so we're seeing FINRA and some of the local SEC advice in New York, for example, advocating a multi-cloud approach when you're thinking about a cloud strategy for these highly regulated industries. And it's at the moment at the level of recommendations, but what I've been hearing is that perhaps over the next couple of years, there's going to be more of a mandate coming from the regulators here. So, I mean, I mentioned financial services, but it really does mean something to every industry that has critical capabilities they want to run in the cloud, and they have to think about high availability, and cloud concentration risk is a key factor when multi-cloud comes into play.
Oh, fantastic. Great insights, Mark. And I think with that, we've come to the end of the session. And I want to take a moment to thank our speakers today. Thank you, Mark, Yusuf, and Ramki, for sharing your insights and keeping it real. Also, a big thank you to our attendees. You had some great questions coming in. If you're looking for more insights, please subscribe and follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and you'll get more insights from experts like Yusuf, Mark, Ramki, who are living with this stuff every day. Plus, a big thank you to Yellowbrick for joining us in co-presenting this webinar with Systech. From all of us here today, thank you so much for attending, and this concludes today's event. Bye-bye. Have a good day and good night for people on the other side of the world.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.